Okay, thanks very much everybody for coming and joining this session on recruitment agency marketing. We're going to be covering a lot of different subjects. My name's Adam Gordon. I'm co-founder and CEO at Candidate.ID. I've been in recruitment and recruitment marketing for 21 years. I started as a recruitment consultant, moved into a recruitment marketing agency, built a sourcing business, sold it to a stock market listed recruitment company, stayed there for 4 years, and then decided I wanted to create a technology business. So I've kind of been around a lot of different aspects of recruitment, but it's not me that's going to be talking about my sort of expertise today. I've got 4 very special guests who are joining me, and we're covering a lot of different subjects. So if you want to ask a question, absolutely, please do ask that question using the Q&A function, and I will make sure that we get to it. So we're going to be doing it's kind of like the Graham Norton show. We've got a first guest here. We're going to be bringing on some other people as well. So we're going to be layering up the sofa, if you like. And so first joining me is Jessica Wicks, soon to be Jessica Ross, I believe. And so Jess, just give us a bit of background. What's your CV? Where are you in the world? What's your sort of background in 90 seconds, and then we'll come on to some topics.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So, my name's Jessica Wicks, supposed to be getting married next year if COVID doesn't stop it. So I'll be Jessica Ross. My background, I spent 10 years in retail. I then decided I was going to fall into marketing. So I did that for a few years, and then I fell into recruitment marketing. I feel like anyone I ever speak to has fallen into recruitment marketing. So that's what I've been doing for the last 2.5 years. I was furloughed in May, so decided to start my own freelance business as well. So I've been doing a bit of social media, a bit of copywriting, a bit of e-commerce as well. So a lot of fingers in a lot of pies. But I have now been made redundant. So I am also on the market for a new role as well. So I'm just trying to share my knowledge with the world.
Great. Okay. So there's a couple of topics that I think you've got some experience with, and I really want to focus on them. The first one is so relevant today, and it's around corporate social responsibility. So I've got some very, I'm quite opinionated on this subject when it comes to marketing and CSR and the link between the two. But I'm really interested in your sort of opinion and expertise in this area. CSR and recruitment businesses, what are the most important things people need to know about and need to be thinking about?
Well, I think the first thing is to remember that it should not be a box ticking exercise. So many people will sort of go through the motions, and I think especially in recruitment it's very much a sort of, oh, we'll sponsor a charity event, we'll write a check and pop our logo on everything, and that's it, job done. We've ticked off brand awareness and we've ticked off helping out a charity, done. But there's an expectation, especially once you reach a certain size, that you do need to be doing things without expecting anything in return. So sometimes the things that are done quietly can be as effective as the things that are done when you're shouting more about them. And I think, even when you think about more grassroots in branches, what you can actually be doing with your teams. So whether it's, going up for a plastic-free award or going out and doing a litter picking on a beach, that's still things you can share on your social media accounts and you can promote on your blogs, but it's not just so self-serving. You are giving back to people. You're not just writing a check and slapping a logo on something. And I think it's really about asking your employees what's important to them as well. I know a lot of companies will actually have volunteering policies, which I think are fantastic, because it allows employees a certain amount of days off per year that they can go and work on a project that's close to their heart, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a one size fits all. One employee might prefer to work with animals, another one might want to do something with recycling, or someone else might want to help out the homeless. So I think it's really important to remember that every person will want to support something slightly different. And I think, I know one of the challenges that I get asked a lot is, well, how, with something like that, how would we prove that people are actually going and doing that, and I think there's definitely an element of trust there. You need to be, you should be able to trust your employees to go and do it. It shouldn't be something that they need to get validation and proof of. But I think certainly, to reflect back to marketing, a great thing would be to ask them to come back in and share their experience. They can take some photos, they can help write an article, and you can then get that out on, on social and on your blog as well. And it's much more personal then, and it's much more tailored, and it's not as shouty as maybe, oh, look at us, we're doing this really great thing. It's just actually one of our employees took some time out, and it's showing you as an employer of choice as well, because you're supporting your employees to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you think that CSR is something that should be led by marketing, or do you think it's something that should be led by the CEO? And who else do you think should be involved to really make it entrenched within a recruitment business?
I think definitely everything has to come from the top down. And, if the CEOs and founders of a business aren't behind it, then the teams aren't going to be behind it either. But I definitely think everyone should be involved. There's different elements that everyone can bring to it. Obviously, from the marketing side, there's a lot that we can do in terms of storytelling and actually, getting people to engage with things, after things have happened, or even the build up, into what they're doing. But it has to come from the people who are actually looking at policies in their business. How are we actually doing this? And, a lot of businesses, especially in recruitment, they'll have this sort of unknown, oh yeah, sure, if someone asked us, they could go and do it. But you need to promote that. Employees need to know that that's available to them. And I think that's the biggest thing, that, if it needs to be accessible to everyone, it can't just be, or if a one-off, if one person wanted to do it. You need to make sure that you're not just saying it's okay, and you're actually openly showing this to people as an opportunity that they can take.
So you don't have to name the businesses, but have you got any examples of how to do it, like really good examples? And conversely, do you have any examples of things that have backfired? Because this can go really wrong in so many different ways. So have you got any examples of things not to do, or where it has gone wrong and you've seen this happen and a company's actually been disadvantaged as a result of doing it the wrong way?
Yeah, so I can think of one bad one actually, and it's a company down here in Dorset that really wanted to get involved in the homeless sector in the area, and a lot of different charities will run like sleep outs and things like that, and they decided they were going to do their own, and they just literally slept outside their shop, but they sort of had got a KFC, and they had like all the luxuries and things like that. And bearing in mind, this was a retail premises, and they were on a street they were sharing with actual homeless people who were sleeping out on the street, and it did get picked up, and it did backfire on them, because it almost felt like they were making a mockery of it, really. I think things like that, there are legitimate companies and charities that do run events like those, and they're done in a safe environment, and they're done in the right way. So you really do need to think about, how is this going to be perceived by other people? You've got to make sure that you are ultimately protecting your brand while you're doing it, but it needs to be sincere as well. And I think that's the thing with the example like that, it almost felt like an exercise, just because it wasn't the same kind of conditions. You can't say we're doing this to experience the life of a homeless person if you're sat there with a KFC, and it's just not the same. So I think definitely
sounds like a bit of fun, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds like let's sleep in the street for fun and get some champagne.
Yeah, it was a sleepover with a group of friends who were all having a good time, and it didn't have the same it didn't have the effect that they desired. But I think definitely in terms of doing things positively, ultimately it has to come from the heart. And, you know, obviously there will be times where an opportunity presents itself to sponsor something and put a logo on, and that's fine. But I would say, think about what it is you're sponsoring. Does it actually represent you or your business or your values? And I think that's the perfect place to start as well with these things, is actually look at your company values. You know, do you have any? And
Yep.
if you do, are the activities that you're, you know, doing as a business, do they reflect those? And, you know, sometimes it can be things on a national scale. You know, people always get involved in things like the Macmillan Bake Off and things that are, you know, really big, but actually what's happening locally for you, you know, grassroots charities, those really small ones that don't get loads of funding, they really do just rely on other local businesses supporting them. So I would say definitely reach out to, you know, businesses in your area, your community, because actually you'll find that probably both, you know, your clients and your candidates and your customers, they'll react a lot better to that, and they'll want to engage with it because it's also their community as well.
Okay, one related subject to this, we covered on Recruiting Brainfeed quite extensively recently, was around the politicization of certain causes and the way that companies adapt to that. So let's talk about things like Black Lives Matter and Pride and things like that. What's your opinion on the way organized recruitment businesses should approach this, if they should?
So I think it's definitely a topic that is really important, and it's obviously great that so many people are talking about this at the moment. I have seen examples of where it's been done absolutely atrociously. And I think, you know, the thing you need to start with before you think, oh, we're just going to put something out on social media and say that we, you know, we care and we want to help change things, and actually look at your own business. And actually, if, you know, those feelings and those sentiments aren't already reflected in your own business, then that could be the way you approach that. You know, saying, actually, off the back of this movement, we have taken a good hard look at ourselves and, you know, our diversity in our business, and actually these are the changes that we're going to make going forward. So you can support, you know, you can support movements that way. I think it's not a cookie cutter, you know, one size fits all. It's not, but it is really important that you're not just joining a conversation for the sake of joining a conversation because you don't want to be left out, or because you think everyone's talking about it, so you have to. It's not about staying silent either. Sometimes saying nothing is worse, but you just need to make sure that you're coming at it from the right direction and not just saying something for the sake of it, because people see that and they see that it's insincere. You know, especially if your company isn't very diverse and you're, you know, supporting a movement like that in a sort of quite cliched way, then people are just going to see straight through it. So
yeah, I agree. Let's move on to a related subject, because I think what you stand for and what you believe in and what you promote is part of your personal brand. And so let's talk about personal branding a bit more specifically. What are the most important things that people need to be thinking about in recruitment when it comes to personal branding?
So similar to CSR, it needs to come from the top down. It 100% needs to be led by the leaders of the business. I think a lot of the time in recruitment, CEOs and founders don't actually understand the weight that they can offer. And that actually, you know, they are leaders in their industry, and people will listen to what they have to say. And, you know, it's always the old sort of saying, people buy from people and not from brands or companies. You know, it's just the way of the world. People trust people more. And I think, you know, if you see your CEO or your founder doing it, then there's no excuse, you know, for you not to be doing it as well. So I think there's definitely a culture within recruitment. You know, it is sort of sales. And actually sometimes it can kind of be, oh, well, that's the marketing team's job. They deal with that. Or, you know, sometimes it's a generational thing. It's, well, I don't even have a LinkedIn. I don't have time for LinkedIn, or I don't know how to use it. But those aren't really, you know, they are excuses. They're not really reasons. And so, you know, it's not just about posting for the sake of posting. It's about making sure that you're sharing content that's actually, you know, decent. And it's always about either inspiring, delighting, or educating people. That's what content needs to do at the heart of it. But another thing is making sure that, you know, whatever you're doing, you're linking it back to your business. You know, a lot of people will take one post and then it will just be individually shared on everyone's platforms. And we all know, especially with, you know, LinkedIn and sites like that, the algorithms are our enemies. And it's one of those things, if it doesn't get X amount of engagement in the first hour, then it dies a death. So actually encouraging your teams, you know, to be engaging with those posts, and they can then share that, but put their own spin on it as well. So, you know, not just copy and paste, share, done, actually adding in their own thoughts on it, because every individual recruiter's profile will have completely different connections from completely different backgrounds. And it needs to be appropriate for them. You know, as I said, I spent 10 years in retail. So a lot of, you know, my LinkedIn connections are retail. So sometimes I'll take a piece of news and I'll put a slight spin on it because I know that my audience will engage with that content. But I think as well, you know, it's really about making sure that what you're posting is valuable to your audience. And that's why I said about CEOs and founders that ultimately, you know, these sites are what's going to help win them business. And especially at the moment with COVID, you know, recruiters have absolutely, you know, smashed the phones to kingdom come. And if business, you know, still isn't coming in, you're going to need to rely on sites, you know, B2B sites such as LinkedIn to actually help drive those sales and get more clients through the door. And you're going to do that by having engaging conversations with everyone, and not just the one person marketing team or the 2-person marketing team that is trying to share everything they can, but without having the backup of recruiters. You need to make sure that you are getting involved with your marketing team's content and sharing it, and actually building your own personal brand. You know, some people don't even have a photo on their LinkedIn profile, and it's like, that's a basic. Just get your profile in order, you know, clean up house before you start doing all of this. But it really doesn't need to be time consuming either. You know, you can just spend 10-15 minutes each day, do a bit of networking, you know, add some new connections, share a bit of content. It doesn't need to be your whole day. It needs to be a part of, you know, your business development. Essentially, it needs to form part of that sales process.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Okay. On that, we welcome Michael to join us on screen. Michael, welcome. And you just give us a bit of background on yourself. What's your CV? What you do? What's your expertise? And then let's talk a bit more about social media.
Yeah, so my experience was predominantly commercial PR, very traditional PR and events back in Scotland. And like Jessica, I fell into recruitment marketing about 4 years ago in Manchester. And since then, obviously the world's changing, so you can't just do PR anymore. So my skill set then broadened to more wider content, social media and PR within a fairly large recruitment business in Manchester, and that's where I am now.
Yeah, great. Okay, so from a as a PR background, and moving into branching out into other areas over the last few years, what do you think about social media as a channel and a vehicle, and does it conflict with your traditional PR background? Or give us your views on that.
At first, I guess probably it was. I mean, I graduated university 10, 12 years ago now. And back then, social media wasn't a new concept, but it wasn't something that every single PR firm was really embracing a huge deal.
No.
Whereas nowadays, if you're not embracing social media and interacting and making sure that social PR and it all fits into your wider marketing strategy, you're just not really going to go that much further. So it was a bit of a button head bit for me for the first sort of 6 to 12 months of kind of getting my head around a fairly newish concept to me, but then trying to just make sure that I'm integrating that into what I believe is still very important in traditional PR and traditional content and stuff, and making sure they both work in tandem rather than opposing each other, which I think happens quite a lot in a lot of places. I mean, not talking between your PR and social and content teams and they all work as singular sort of engines almost doesn't really work. It needs to all be much more integrated and much more put together. And I guess that's where I probably learned the most when I was kind of bringing that into some of my skill set.
I think there's a bit of conflict between the traditional PR discipline, which is highly disciplined, content calendars, a lot of planning, a lot of thinking around message, versus social media, which is a lot more spontaneous. Do you find that there's people in recruitment businesses who are good at contributing to one thing but not so much the other, or do you think one skill set and the other are fluid?
I think so, definitely. So where I currently work, our MD is very, very vocal on things. So he tends to work very well if you're doing your very reactive pieces on social media and PR and stuff. But I certainly think that there's an often a very big disconnect between the two. Like you say, you've got to sit for a good PR strategy, traditional PR strategy to work, it's got to be a lot of the forward planning. So you can plan something now and then tomorrow it's completely out of date, or you have to completely change it and do that. So I think you need to have a real mix of the two. I think you do need to have the forward planning, and I'm a big fan of Marcom's calendars and making sure that you've got every single date that you need to within that calendar, almost as an overarching view of this is what we could be talking about on these dates. But then you've also got to be very reactive with it as well. One of my favourite things is listening to the news in the morning and going, wait there, why are they talking about that topic? You can almost start getting trends and news stories and stuff as you hear them happening. And I think that's where traditional PR and social media can almost work really well together, is if you're picking up on these topics and you've got a like-minded person that can then put out a very brief comment that can then get picked up by press and put into lots of different publications and social media and stuff. That very rapid reactive PR works very well. But like you say, if you just stick to a content calendar and think, oh no, we can't do that today because we plan to do X, Y, and Z for this month, and then the two of them, they clash greatly, and then you're just not going to get as much value out of what you're doing.
Absolutely. Jess, do you think there are, I mean, clearly some recruitment consultants are better at social media and generating value from it than others. What are those who are not so good, what are the like 3 or 4 things they should be doing to be generating more value for themselves and their business out of social media?
So I'm a massive advocate, first and foremost, for marketing, recruitment marketers actually offering training to consultants, and making sure they do have all the tools they need, even if it is just the basic, how do I even sign in, like you need to make sure you've got that covered. You can't just assume that everyone knows. But I think, for them, ultimately, it's about, okay, what are your goals? Because obviously we've got our goals as recruitment marketers, but for them, it's very different. They want it quick, they want it fast, they don't want to faff about. So it's like, okay, right, well, what can we do to get you that as quickly as possible? So it's really about educating them about how they can best use the platform for what they need. Again, we talked about, sharing content and actually, things that are personal to them and local to them, because their community will engage with that. And it's also a really nice way to sort of drip feed, so that eventually someone who was a completely cold lead eventually becomes, a warm lead, because you've had so much interaction with them that eventually they're like, oh yeah, you're the person who posted that thing on that site about that event, and you've already got a dialogue and you've got something going. But I think more than anything is just for them to jump in and do it. A lot of people can find it quite scary, and LinkedIn especially at the moment is so hot on video, and there are so many good and so many bad videos out there, but ultimately they get massive engagement. So the one thing I would say 100% to consultants is go and give a video a try. You don't need fancy equipment, you don't need fancy microphones, literally just you and your phone, hit record. It'll probably be a shambles, but you can make a joke of that, and people like that because it's real. And what people don't want is for you just to share a link to a job on your company website 4 times a day with nothing else on there. They don't want that. That isn't exciting. It's not fun. No one wants to look at it.
No, absolutely. And I think you said earlier that your rule for social media posts are they need to be inspiring, they need to inspire, delight, or educate.
Yeah.
I think that's a really great set of rules. I always used to tell people it either needs to be useful or relevant or both. But inspire, delight, or educate is a really, really great way of putting it. Michael, I want to talk a bit more about PR specifically, though, because a lot of recruitment businesses don't have a particularly formal sort of approach towards PR. And I think that's because they don't necessarily know what they stand for and what they're trying to promote and what they want to be famous for. So I'm really interested to know, from your background of working with lots of different industries and then moving into recruitment, what was your initial thoughts about how the recruitment world was making use of PR when you first entered the industry?
I think I was quite lucky in the fact that we had an MD and a marketing team that saw the value in it. And our business had been working with an external firm for quite a while, kind of building it up. But I think it's not the norm certainly. I mean, if you speak to other agencies and stuff, they still don't really. I guess a lot of maybe recruitment leaders don't understand what PR is and what it's used for. I think a lot of people have still got the old Samantha Jones view of a PR person will sit and take people out for lunch, and it's a very archaic kind of look of how a PR person works. Whereas, and it stems back to this whole idea of it moving into the digital era and PR changing with the times as well, and the need to really show value. I mean, for the past 4 years, I've been working at Sellic, and we regularly attend a number of events and stuff like that, and people are always coming up to our MD and saying, "Oh, I saw you here and I saw you there," and it's that kind of recognition that he gets, that he goes, "Wait there, this is actually really working for me," and I guess he's started to speak to other leaders about it, and I think it's starting to open up. I think there are other firms that are starting to kind of wake up to the importance of it and how it actually can help. But I also think there's a lot of businesses that think they can have a PR person that will put 3 press releases out a year that talks about their financial success and call them a PR person, whereas that's just not what a PR person is. Yeah, okay, you can sing about your company success and stuff, but to really get the value out of a PR team and within a wider marketing function, you've got to look at where, like you say, what you want to be famous for, where you want to see yourself being cited about. What sort of, it's about thought leadership, isn't it? PR is building thought leaders within the recruitment space. So if you think, oh, I want to be a thought leader on CSR, for example, then you need to really have a really common thread across that and not jump ship and jump into lots of different topics. It's you're in it for a long game if you're trying to do something in PR, because you're trying to build that thought leadership over time, I think. So it's quite a hard one to get recruitment leaders to buy into, I guess, because a lot of people in recruitment jump from thing to thing, and their heads are always quite in it, and they don't really look at the long game per se all the time. But I think it's really important to start thinking about that, especially in these times where you need to differentiate yourself any way you can.
Absolutely. So just really quickly, I think Samantha Jones looked like she had a lot of fun. However, I doubt PR is like that, but maybe
I've
in New York,
never had it like that, I tell you, but
she mixed business and pleasure a lot, didn't she? But anyway, so I want to just some of the people that are have attended the webinar or are going to tune in to the recording might not be entirely familiar with what PR is and how it differs from other forms of marketing. What's a day in the life of a PR specialist? What are the 4 or 5 different main objectives that they have? What do they do specifically?
So every day, every morning, I will skim newspapers and read the news, and I'll listen to the news on the way to work. I'll listen to a podcast and stuff like that, because you need to be very much reactive in PR. And if there's something that's bubbling under the issue of what you want to be talking about, then you need to jump on it. A lot of PR is about piggybacking onto news, or almost being ahead of the news before it comes. So I spend a lot of my mornings doing that and looking at what's coming. Because generally, if you want to get a story within a paper the next day, it needs to land in a journalist's email box by mid-morning. And then you need to be following up and making sure that you sell that in. So the mornings are all about kind of trying to generate those stories and generating leads like that. And I guess the rest of the time is a lot of it is the planning aspect and stuff. So looking at what's going on in the market, building marketing planners, making sure that you're very much aware of what's going on in your markets. I mean, most recruitment businesses will have a number of different specialist areas. So when I was in my role, I treated each specialist area as like a client almost. So you're sitting there and you're building each specialist area as a client portfolio, and you're making sure you're going and getting as much as you can within each bits, and working with key publications and stuff. There's quite a lot of publications will come back to you just now and say, there's a financial element involved in that, and if people are forgetting PR because they think there's almost always a financial element, then they're silly to almost disregard it. I think, because if you've got a good PR person and you've got a good story and you've really thought about it and thought about the angles and stuff, you'll get something everywhere. So a lot of my day is about those piggybacking onto big ideas, and then really looking at what specialist skill sets we've got within our business, within our clients and with our candidates, and then trying to get angles and stuff of things we can talk about that will build their brand within their areas, but also helps the business long term as well.
So if I'm the founder of a recruitment business and you're working with me, I mean, what are the sort of 2 to 3 kind of main objectives that you're going to help me with? What are the big wins that we're going to achieve together?
So it's a big part of it's personal branding. So our MD loves it when people come up to her and say, "Oh, I saw you in the MEN," or "I saw that in the Telegraph there." It's a lot of vanity, isn't it? But it means your name's in there, and you're getting seen for what you want to be seen for. When we are building PR campaigns, it's all around thought leadership, and we look at sentiment values and things like that, and just to make sure that you're almost pinning yourself at a level that you want to be seen at. If you want to be seen as a thought leader in CSR, for example, whatever, then you want to be looking and seeing that go up. So I would look at setting targets and stuff on how much you're actually being seen within that. So for our business, for example, Joe is very big on politics. So then we pin ourselves against other like-minded recruitment brands, and then I look at how much share of voice Joe gets within that typical area. So it's looking at that and making sure that we're getting as much as possible.
One more question on PR. This links to content more generally, which we're going to come on to in a second. But what are the main? How would you segment the different audiences? Again, I'm founder of a recruitment business. You and I are working together, and you're telling me, okay, there's 4 different distinct audiences, and it might not be 4, it might be 2, it might be 10. I don't know. How would you segment them? You've
got to really look at how you talk to each area, I think. I mean, we spend a lot of time looking at audiences actually, and it's something that I spend probably quite a good amount of my weeks looking into, because within each recruitment brand, you've probably got about 6 or 7 different audience segments that you can go into, depending on what you want to target them for and stuff there. And I think a lot of it, I mean, a lot of your audience will already be on your social media platforms, and especially your consultants' wider networks and stuff. So we do a lot of our audience research through that, and then looking at how we can target them through different messaging and looking at how we can put it together. But segmenting is a very difficult thing to do. I don't think a lot of teams get it right. Certainly it's taken us a very long time to build up audience segments there. And just to save them, but I think they are also changing all the time. But it's just about knowing who you want to speak to and how that person wants to be spoken to is the main thing. And then once you've found that out, almost a PR person will go to find the publications and the blogs and the websites and the journals and stuff that those people are reading, and then that's where my target list for publications come in, to try and get whoever I'm sort of promoting into those places, so they're in front of the right people at the right time.
Absolutely. Okay. And on that, we welcome Ellie. Ellie, thank you very much for coming and joining us today. Do you want to just give us a bit about your background and your experience, and give us your CV in 60 seconds.
Great, thanks for welcoming me, Adam. So I've been in marketing for 15 years. The last 5 years I have spent at a recruitment agency, and recently been made redundant. So again, I'm back on the market, but also doing some freelance stuff. So I, during my time at the agency, spent a lot of time sort of digitalising processes, working with sales teams to basically make themselves more efficient and utilize marketing to support what they were doing. So it was really getting into sort of their nitty-gritty of what they did on a day-to-day basis, what their processes looked like, and how we could bring them forward into the 21st century, I guess. It's quite a high street recruitment model where I was. So, high volume, low margins, a lot of temp business. So it was trying to work out how we can navigate that landscape, start using content and automation amongst various other things to get them working better and producing better results, really.
Okay, let's talk about content specifically. So, I mean, I think you've all got experience in content. Ellie, how has over the last 5 years working at that business, how has content become more important to marketing?
Yeah, I guess it's definitely been a changing landscape. I think prior to being at Swan Staff, I didn't really consider content majorly in what I was doing. I was in the leisure market then. Probably at a top level, the business was doing a little bit of that, but it wasn't overly used. So I guess for recruitment, since I've started, I think it's, people are really knowledge hungry in general, and people want to read. People are on social media regularly. They don't want to just see adverts all the time. They want something that adds value to them. So they really, really want to find out more about it, whether they're a candidate and want to find out more about the industry that they're in, or the best way to, apply for jobs, or, career advice or industry advice. But also on the flip side of that, for clients, they want their recruitment companies to be knowledgeable and to give them information about the market and how changes in their market are affecting trends for hiring, and what they need to do as well to attract the best talent. And all of that is now sort of bound up in content, and whether that be blogs or white papers or research papers, there's so much. It's kind of gone through a bit of an evolution where people were doing a lot of lead magnet stuff, and now people are becoming more protective over giving their email addresses out. So even now things are still changing in the way that you need to approach using content, because I think before, those lead magnets were working really, really well, and I think it's just starting to go the other way now. People are wanting the real value. If you download something, you've given your email address, and it's just a copy and paste of another document with recruitment written over it, which happens quite a lot. It's just not useful, and you're not going to want to engage with those people. So if you're going to do gated content, it's got to be the highest value content that really offers added value there as well.
Let's chunk that back up a bit and talk about what a lead magnet is, because you've mentioned that phrase a couple of times. Some people you're listening might not quite know what you mean by that. Could you be a bit more specific?
Yeah, definitely. So a lead magnet is when you've produced a bit of content. It's usually longer form content. So it might be an ebook or a white paper or a salary survey. And in order to get that bit of information, people have to input their email address on a lead form, and then you're emailed the content afterwards. I've definitely seen a change over the last couple of years, where before you could do that and get like a bit of a rubbish infographic sent through, and you're right, yeah, all right, I'm happy with that. Whereas now people they need more from that content, and people are more wary of it, I think, now as well.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. We'll come on to this in a little while, Ellie, because I want to talk to you about marketing automation, and sort of what are the next steps once you have that email address and things like that. But Jess, you talked about content needs to inspire, delight, or educate, and you talked about video. Does that extend to all different forms of content?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously people need to be really aware of what content they're posting on what platform, and really thinking about, okay, if someone is scrolling through a million Twitter updates, they're just flicking, they're probably not there to be reading, a half an hour long document. They don't have time for that. They may be, on the train or on the bus or just on the move. Whereas, especially LinkedIn now, and with native, publishing with the articles, people are willing to sit and spend time actually absorbing that information when it's posted on the appropriate platform. You know, obviously, even with COVID, I've seen massive changes in LinkedIn, whereas previously, if anyone posted a picture of, you know, with their kids or getting married, you know, they get attacked. That's not appropriate for this platform, but that's completely changed now. And LinkedIn definitely feels like the kind of place now where it doesn't necessarily just have to be specifically business. So, you know, this could be really a great opportunity for people to start sharing those more personal stories about your employees, and, you know, you and your CEOs and your founders as well, so that it's not just all business. And again, this comes back to being sincere and being genuine and actually posting content that people are interested in. If all you do is post jobs, that people don't care, you know, they ultimately, it's not, no one likes to sit and read a job advert, let's be honest. You know, they do it because they have to or they need to. You know, they're not reading it thinking, God, what a great novel. But it's, you know, you have to mix it up and get other content in there. And especially with platforms like Facebook, you know, once someone's followed a page, if they've then got a job with you, they have no need to stay with that page. They have no need to continue seeing your content show up in their newsfeed. So you have to be mixing it up, because otherwise they're just going to leave as quick as they came. So, you know, it's not just about posting stuff that gets people in, it's about retaining them as well.
Absolutely. Jess, it's been really great to have you. I'm afraid I'm going to move you on now because we've got a bit of a carousel, and thank you so much for joining us. Where, if people, tell you what, could you put it in the chat? If anybody wants to talk to you specifically, put it in the chat, and what's the best way to make contact with you? Michael, I want to ask you about the type of, there's lots of different content channels and there's lots of different content formats. Specific sort of, I mean, in terms of different types of content formats, what do you find to be the best formats for different objectives?
I think it really depends on what the overall goal for the business is. We do everything from blogs to white papers and stuff. But I think a lot of recruitment businesses will just jump and say, oh, I think a white paper is right for that, or I think a blog is like that. But you need to really think about why you're actually doing it and what the end goal is. So, for example, if you're looking to educate and get people on maybe to the last stage of the buyer's journey to start buying off you and all that sort of stuff, then you need to be talking about empathy things and nice reviews and really sort of pulling them in and selling them and stuff. So case studies and stuff are a really good way to do that. If you're just wanting to information give, then you're just they're not salesy posts at all and stuff like that. Then blogs are very good to do that, and especially blogs on external articles where you can get backlinks, and then you're almost it's building sort of customer loyalty and stuff. People are coming to your site because you're actually giving them something rather than you just try to sell down your neck and stuff. But then if you want to be really authoritative on a topic and you want to really show that you're a leader in that area, then a white paper works very well for that. If you've got good stats and you work on a survey behind it, and you can build something that people are going to be really interested in reading, and then possibly things like that will get taken on by newspapers, or you might get some press off the back because you've become an authoritative voice on that. So I think it's about looking at your end goal for what the typical campaign is, and then injecting different types of content within that to ensure that you're actually reaching that goal at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Ellie, in terms of a more high street type of recruitment business, is there a different way that you have to think about things?
Yeah, I definitely think there is. I mean, obviously, one of the key things for definitely a temp agency, which a lot of these high street businesses are their bread and butter, is that you have got to attract the candidates, but you've got to attract them in high volumes. So you've got to think about the things that are going to bring lots of people in, but also, you know, once you've attracted them, it's not about just placing them with a client and, you know, let's hope they get past their 6-month probation period or wherever your rebate sits. You've got to think about how you keep those candidates long term. They tend to be quite fickle. They'll move for, you know, 10p, 20p extra an hour to other agencies. You want to ensure that not only are your recruiters building good relationships and treating these people really well, but that there's a marketing background to that as well. So a lot of the work that we did at Swan Staff on the candidate journey was around this relationship, and it can be as simple as, you know, we made sure that all of the date of birth information on the database was then hooked up to an automated email, so we never missed somebody's birthday and they received the birthday email. And the amount of feedback, it sounds silly, but the amount of feedback we got from candidates, so, you know, we'd never thought of that. And it's about making things personal as well. So we did a lot of more traditional stuff, offline stuff as well, where we drop things in on International Nurses Day. We'd drop them all lunches if they were out at work, and that was good for us from, I guess, a PR point of view as well. You know, the clients saw that we were treating our candidates well, and that strengthened relationships. And other candidates that work for other agencies was like, oh, my agency didn't drop a lunch off to me today. So there's a lot more to think about, I think, in terms of those long-term candidate relationships, because if you can keep candidates for longer, you're not working round and round the clock to try and get more candidates through the door. That can, you know, it always needs to be there, but the turnover not being as high makes it a lot easier in the long run.
Absolutely. So something you touched on earlier around lead generation, and I said that I'd like to look into a little bit more, is the concept of marketing automation. And I know that's something that you've had some experience in. So I'm really interested to learn a little bit from that. And yeah, I wonder if you could just give us a kind of outline.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in terms of marketing automation, for those obviously watching that may not really have an idea of what that is, it's about nurturing your prospects. And you need to do that by providing valuable and relevant content to people that's also personalised, and also it needs to be timely. So they need to be getting the right content at the right time. So there's a lot to be done there with sort of segmenting your data. You can't just send the same email out to all your candidates, particularly in a business like I was in, where you've got multiple sectors as well. You know, there was, when I first joined, I think they were just sending the same things out. So, you know, people that were healthcare assistants were receiving jobs that were nothing to do with being a healthcare assistant, because they just sent the same jobs email out to everybody. So it's about sort of utilising the data that you've got to be able to make that experience and that nurture process really, really personalized to the individual. So you know, you want to be tracking things like your email opens and then utilizing that data for the next step. So if somebody opens an email and clicks on a post about the jobs, they're probably likely to be a job seeker. So the next email that you send those people needs to be a jobs related email. Whereas if they're looking more at you know, they click through to something that's more industry news led, or you know, a blog about being in work and progressing your career, you need to deliver them more of that in the future, and not send them a jobs email, because it's probably quite likely they're looking to grow in their current role, or they're interested in finding out more about the industry that they're in, and it's more knowledge based. So yeah, it's really about ensuring that you've got different paths for different people, and not just clumping candidates and clients two separate. They need to be broken down further than that. And the same for, you know, your prospective and existing clients. What is the difference between what you're delivering out to them by sector, by job role? You know, if you've got a hiring manager, their needs might be completely different to an ops manager in terms of what they want to be receiving information about. So it's just about really making that work. And also, for me, it's about harnessing the consultants with that information as well. So, you know, so if you're lucky enough to have systems that give them all of that, that's great. But where I was, we had really antiquated old systems that didn't connect with anything. So when we were running campaigns for sales, we would harness that, you know, we would send out reports saying these people have opened the campaign. Those should be the first people that you call. They're interested. They've clicked on this. They've done that. So it's about, you know, that extra information that you can harness your sales teams with to make their lives easier and make them more efficient, and focus on the leads that are really, really good for them and that are more likely to convert.
Absolutely. So Michael, Ellie is talking about taking people on journeys, I guess, and personalization. Is this something that you've had some experience in, and do you think this is something that recruitment businesses need to be doing more of?
Well, I think content in general is all around taking people on a journey, isn't it? I mean, whatever you do in marketing in general, in content specifically, you need to be injecting different forms of content, social, PR, whatever, at different stages of that journey to build loyalty and then to eventually convert people into leads and then bring fees. I think a lot more recruitment businesses are cottoning on to that fact now. I don't think everyone has. I think you've got big sort of established businesses that you still go onto their blog, and every single blog is just a very generic topic on CV tips or whatever, which is great, and you need that evergreen content on your site. But you also need to be looking at where else you want to be taking your customers through your site and off page and onto other sites as well. And it still amazes me how many recruitment websites you go onto and the blogs don't have any links whatsoever. So how if you're building that kind of loyalty with a customer, how does that candidate know where you want them to go next if there's nothing on that page to then bring them somewhere else? And that was that was a big thing that we had to build. When I first started at the business, we had our consultants blogging 3 times a week, every week, which was just a complete waste of time because all these blogs are going on the site and then nothing's actually happened with them. Instead, now I think maybe we'll post 1 per week, and it's a really, really considered choice, and it's got really nice links through it, and we might put an evergreen piece of content somewhere else, and it's that journey and those links that will then eventually have someone come back to your site and eventually apply for a job or have a client come and give you that piece of contact. So I think it's very important to have a logical journey. It needs to be logical, otherwise people will just jump off the site. And it also needs to have different forms of content at each stage to almost help entice candidates into the site to then apply for jobs.
Yeah. Michael, on that note, listen, it's been really great to have you. So thank you very much for coming and joining us. I'm going to move you over a little bit so that we can welcome Matthias and give him a bit more screen space. So where can people find out about you? Where can they connect with you? Can you just post that in the chat so everybody can see that?
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Michael. Matthias, welcome. Thank you very much for coming and joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to talk to you specifically about brand and branding, but really, first of all, interested to just understand a bit more about you and your background, and wonder if you could just give us a quick intro.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks very much for having me, first of all, and lovely participants and interesting conversations going on. My background has been in recruitment branding for about 10 years or so, but I've been designing for pretty much all my life. I mean, it's rooted in me, doing the whole creative aspect. I think the calling point for me to be a designer in recruitment was trying to move away from the whole idea of that whole generalized what design could do, what brands could do for your business. And recruitment looked like one of the industries that I felt I could quite fit in quite comfortably in, considering that I've got 10 years experience in it. So why not? I've set up my business and now I run a company called Onset Brand Consultancy, which just looks at creating design and branding for the recruitment sector. And just recently, I created Flipping Branded, which is a short guide and walkthrough for businesses and individuals to learn how to define their brand and create a unique brand experience for their customers.
Okay, first of all, like just back to basics. What is brand? What's your definition of brand?
Well, I mean, look, you could go to Amazon and Google it, and you'll get over 1 million different definitions. Okay.
Yeah.
So whatever I say could, be interpreted in different ways. I mean, I can tell you what a brand isn't, and we all know, a brand isn't a logo. A brand isn't your product or your service. A brand isn't the person who's in charge of the brand. A brand is more of a less tangible asset within a business. It's really about the feeling that a customer has towards your business or your product or your service. And normally those brands are supported by a brand identity or a brand development or marketing suite to then build on your brand development. I work in design, so I use design heavily to carry that message out with branding. So it works hand in hand with copywriting and that sort of like for content creation.
Absolutely. Ellie, I want to talk to you about or ask you about branding from the recruitment agency context, and how important is it for you? Were marketing director for 5 years at large multi-site high street business. What did branding mean to you at that business?
I guess for us, it meant the ability to grow into quite diverse new geographic locations and make that successful, I guess. So to do that, we sat on a lot of being at sort of high volume temp, we sat on a lot of frameworks, and I think a lot of people may have a sort of misconception with that being on a framework automatically then guarantees you work, basically. So obviously if we were working with local people in, say, Essex on a framework, and then we opened a new branch somewhere else in the country, say Birmingham, Nottingham, there was a lot of work there to do to be able to actually monopolise on being on that framework. It wasn't as simple as just being like, yeah, we're on the framework, you need to give us work. So for us, the brand there was really to back up, we'd have to build that feeling with our customers that they would actually ring their site and say, these guys are really good at what they do, you should be using them, they're coming into your area. And we did a lot of that sort of advocacy work, and doing those internal referrals with our clients within multi-site businesses, so they would actually recommend us when we were moving into a new area and saying, these guys know what they're doing, they know what they're talking about, they'll be able to provide you with the really good staff that you need to keep your business going. So yeah, it was really, really important in terms of a multi-site operation. And I guess for me as a marketer, one of the frustrations that I had quite often is controlling that brand with all of our people putting like stretch logos on things and using the wrong colours, the wrong fonts, and all of this stuff. And it was continuous thing. And we did a lot of work in house to be able to stop that by just harnessing them with everything and the tools that they needed, so that they didn't have to go and make their own images to put on social media. All of that became a bank of stuff so that we had ultimate control over it. So yeah, it's really important.
Matthias, what are the most important, it might be 3, it might be 10 things that a recruitment business really has to cover when they're considering brand? I know it's not just a logo, it's not just design, it's not, what are all the different things and why they're important?
I think it goes in steps. I mean, it's a process to defining your brand, and it's not really a case of just going, right, I like blue, I like pink, and I like these kind of images. That's my brand. There's a lot of thought which goes into creating a brand. A lot of people, what they do is they tend to go into that whole deep dive search, into data-driven searches, to identify a perception which is being covered by data. And I think that's one of the misconceptions when you're creating a brand, because it's not based on data. A brand's more based on insights and that gut feeling that a customer has to you. So one of the things that I found which is really important in brand is just to get out and speak to your customers, really, generally. That's the first and foremost. If you speak to your customers and learn from them, you'll be surprised about what kind of data you could get from that, what sort of insights you get from that. And that's quite a powerful use in advertisement, branding, and content search. But just going back to defining your brand, that is one of the most key areas that I find in building a brand or identifying a brand. It's not the same as building a brand, where it's adding all those images and colors. Defining is more of a case of deep diving into what you're about. What are you trying to sell? Who your target audience are? Learning what the relationship between what good looks like to your customers and how can you provide that. And these are all intangible assets. So we're really kind of thinking of an idea which you won't be able to touch physically with your hands. So how do we do that? We do that with strategy, and we meticulously break down attributes, traits, insights, and break those down, segment them, and then create what I call a visual direction, which kind of sets out the tone of what your brand is. And it's from there that we can then identify what good brand looks like for a recruitment business or a desk or for a person even.
Does it include the physical aspects, such as the reception area that somebody comes to sit in and wait for their interview? Does it include the way that you conduct a Zoom interview? Does it include all those sorts of processes and things like that as well?
Well, look, I said to a previous boss, leader of a recruitment business once when I went into their office, and I'm sitting there waiting in a reception area, and they've got these massive brand value posters dotted about the place, and it was their staff shouting out, you know, we're innovative, we're collaborative, and all this, and it looked lovely. If I was a candidate desperate for work, you know, I might be bought into that. But as a client, I'm just reading the same message, like this business is trying to show their brand on their walls. And that's the issue I'm trying to explain here is that a brand is a feeling. So you don't have your brand on your wall, you live it. Your customer and your clients will walk in through that door and feel that they're a part of this organization, that they're welcomed. And there's that idea around there, how things are displayed around the office. So it's everything really. It's everything from the whole spatial design to how your brand sits on paper and how people work and live into that brand. Really hard to define that properly for you.
I asked Jess about some good and bad examples of CSR earlier. I'm going to ask you the same type of question. You don't have to name companies, but have you seen any absolutely brilliant brands within the recruitment industry, and why were they brilliant? Or have you seen any absolutely terrible brands, and why were they terrible?
Adam, I've been asking the same question for 2 years since I started Onset Brand. You know, the word onset is quite a negative word. And the idea why I set it up for recruitment is because there's a lot of negativity in recruitment. So I think what I'm really trying to do is understand what those issues are, because there are issues. One thing I'm starting to see a lot of in the last year is recruitments aren't really brands, are they? They're really a business with people who are serving them for their candidates and clients. You know, unlike a brand that you could associate a product with or a service, recruitment's slightly different in that sense, where we're coming up with personal branding or driving new content creation or all these other methods of trying to attract the candidate. And that's really all it is, it's attracting candidate. So I think there's lots of ways to do good brand in recruitment, but it all comes down to defining that brand and what that means to you and your customers more than anything.
So it sounds like it's a bit more of a scientific process than most of us would probably apply to it. Listen, we're out of time now, but Matthias, Ellie, Jess, and Michael, thank you so much, everybody, for coming and joining me on this. I feel like we've done an hour's like whirlwind right through, almost through the full marketing mix, pretty much. There's not a lot of big topics we've missed, but I've really enjoyed it. I've learned from all of you, and this will be shared out on social media and with a lot of other people. And yeah, all the very best, everybody. Oh, Matthias and Ellie, would you mind please just post into the chat where can people find out about you, so that that's available easily for people. And yeah, thanks again, as I said, and all the very best.
Thank you very much, Adam. Appreciate it.